I have a question for you guys. How many campaigns that are running out there, let's say search, do you think are like close to right? Like,
I think
5%.
you pre-call before we start recording, you threw out the number 98% are so 2% are in, are right. I'd say that's a pretty fair estimation. Most campaigns that we audit, like we've been auditing campaigns since 2015 and seeing big company names in there, and you're just like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And you see ones that Google reps have built, and you're like, what the heck? So I'd say it's maybe not 2%, maybe it's 5%. I don't know, but I'd say it's probably on the very low side, low side of 10%, less than 10%.
Yeah, I think 10% is probably a good number. I would say that as well.
So 90% are probably not set up right, and Google's making how much a year?
Billions.
Well, I mean, if you look at their auto suggestions, it's masterful copywriting and masterful, not mental manipulation, but like, what's the word for it? Conversion rate optimization. It's incredible because they're the authority figure. Why wouldn't this be correct for my campaign?
Yeah.
And so
why would they lead us astray?
Yeah, it's
Do no evil, right?
It used to be do no evil. I don't think it's the
I
same.
think
I don't
they
think that's
dropped
their
that.
motto anymore, is it?
Yeah.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
And that's it. Sorry, Google. We're done.
Yeah.
We're done.
I mean, yeah.
But yeah. So well, I'll throw out one other thing. When we look, like Nick said, just we know right away if you look at the match types and you see a broad in there, and you see multiple broads in there, and you see a lot of impressions, and you'll see a lot of impressions, but if you see a lot of clicks in there, right off the bat without even getting to the search term report, there's going to be an issue there in most niches. Dustin,
there's a thing that the common man can do in their account to check to see if their account manager is doing their job. And it's very simple. You go into change history. And I will tell you, if an account is running really well, we might not touch it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. If it's running like gangbusters and everything's going great, why touch that, right? But if you look at that change history and you look and see what are they doing for changes, how often are they touching it, it might be you don't want to touch it too often, but look in there, and if you look at what it says, it'll tell you somebody clicked on the Google recommendations. So if you've got an account manager that's just going in and saying yes to all the account recommendations, buddy, you don't need an account manager. You can do that yourself. You can burn your own cash. I mean, so looking at change histories will give you a good idea of what's going on in that account. And if our clients ask, we'll show them what the change histories look like. If there's and you can have paralysis by analysis where you have an account manager doing too much, pulling too many levers. But I think that's a good baseline for people that have access to their accounts. If they want to see what's going on inside their account, look at the change history. Now, don't beat somebody up because they didn't do something for a couple of weeks if the numbers are good. But at the same time, ask questions on why are we doing Google recommendations? Why did you feel like this was a good idea, right? Because it tells the story of that account.
I think I did a video one time on what you mentioned there, which was over optimizing, because some people feel like they have to be doing something all the time, and then you optimize this cost down, and then you optimize that cost down. Next thing you know, you optimize yourself out of leads. So there's a balance there between optimizing and just doing busy work. Especially if you're using a third-party piece of software, they're generally designed to continue to try to come up with a recommendation. Yep. And some of those recommendations, there's a balance between, do I want to pay a little extra for leads, but get the leads? Or do I want to optimize my cost down to, $13 a lead, but only get 7 of them?
Yep. Right. Yeah. There's a balance.
Like I can get a 75% conversion rate on a campaign if I want to focus in on one exact match keyword and only get 3 leads a month. And because people are always asking, what's a good conversion rate? Not like, well, we shoot between 10 and 35. We have some lower, some higher, but it depends on what you're trying to do. I'm sorry, I just segued to an entirely different conversation.
No,
it's you're relevant, in charge here.
It's relevant. It all plays in. Dustin, I'm going to circle back. I see you wanted to say something. I just want to say something to what Mark just said. Having the goal in mind is also really important. and when you're doing the audit, because with target CPA now, conversion rate isn't necessarily the main factor, and CTR, click-through rate, aren't the main factors anymore. It's your cost per lead. So like we have some in the real estate investor space where we're hitting their cost per lead that they want, but their conversion rate might be at 10%, which historically would have been super low for us. We'd want to be at 20% if we were running max conversions or manual. But when you're running these new AI bid strategies, you have to pick what is your main KPI that you're looking for. So when you're doing that audit, make sure you know what they think success looks like first, so that you can work backwards into a solution.
Yeah,
Dustin,
that's actually what I was going to say. I was going to say, you can do an audit to tell how things, like certain things are out of place. But when we try to do an audit for somebody, I usually get on the horn with them and try to figure out what are you trying to do? Like, tell me what your outcome, an ideal outcome would be. What products or services are we going to focus on? Because what happens is, if you go into an account assuming that what they want has been represented there, you would be vastly mistaken. So it might be that you tell me that we want to focus on this particular product or service, but when I look at what you built, it's not even there, or it's there in a small ad group, but this other thing is stealing all your traffic, right? So if I go into it just looking at what is, it doesn't mean that that's what should be. And so I think that's a big part of it, is knowing where we're trying to get to. Also, any targets. I can't even believe this, but I'd say maybe 20% of the time that I do an audit and I ask them, okay, what is your target CPA? What's your target ROAS? Maybe 20% of the time they have a number for me.
Right.
They don't know. They tell me, oh, well, what do you think? I'm like, well, I don't know. It's your business. Like, I can tell you what I would, guesstimate it to be. Like, if you're in a service industry, I mean, your cost per lead could vary. It could be $30, it could be 300, depending on what kind of services you have. But it really comes down to your margins, comes down to a lot of different things. Your average cost per, either product or service, whatever. Are they repeat customers? Are we getting a lifetime customer here, or somebody's going to buy again, or just a one-off deal? So there's a lot of questions that I think people need to ask. But if you've never communicated that to either the person on your team that's running your ads, or an agency, or it's yourself, ask yourself, how can a person hit a goal that they don't know of, right? And if they're getting a good result and you're happy with it without knowing all that, then that's great. But use that as a baseline. And then now let's figure out, where are we right now? Okay, is this a good number? Are we happy with that? And that way you have something to shoot for going forward. Because the worst thing for like me and our team is that we have a client that we bring on and say, okay, my team asks me, okay, what's the target for this? Oh, well, the client wasn't sure. We're just going to run the ads, get the best we can, and ask him at the end of the month how he feels about it. Like, that's what it's going to come down to. And for the first few months, sometimes you got to do that. But then after you've got some baseline data, that becomes our internal baseline. The client hasn't set that, but if they're happy and these are the numbers, then those seem like happy numbers. So we're gonna work off that. But I think it's really important, if you're gonna have somebody do an audit, or you're auditing your own stuff, you have to know what success looks like, or else how are you going to get there? And then there's also, like you said, Ed, there's bid strategies that are more relevant for one thing than another. There are certain campaign types that might do better for one thing than another. It just depends what your goal is. So, a lot of times people are just like, oh, well, they think this is easier than it is. And it can be. I mean, you can keep it super simple. If you got a small budget and you can compete in a big pond with your small budget and take your chips and walk home and you're happy with it, then you can do that. But if you want to, usually this happens when you want to grow and you want to like take over market share, you need to be thinking about this stuff. It's not just like, there's $50,000 a month worth of traffic, I'm going to buy 1,000 of it and I'm happy with that. Okay, good. But if you want to get hired up, taking over that market, you're going to have to think about that a little bit. So it's not just a one-off approach, in my opinion.